Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us on our webinar on the Sasakawa USA USJETAA grant program for chapters and sub-chapters. Just so you know, we will be recording this webinar today so that people who are not able to attend can listen to it and view it later. Let's get started. So first, I want to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Bahia Simons-Lane. I'm the Executive Director of USJETAA. USJETAA is an independent 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization, and we serve as a resource for and about the JETAA network and alumni in the United States. Our goal is to provide support for JET alumni chapters, for the chapter leadership, and for JET alumni who maybe are unaffiliated. One of our goals is to figure out where JETs are and what they're doing post-JET, and figuring out how we can provide offerings that will support them. And then Joy will introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Joy Champalou. I'm a program officer at Sasakawa USA. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan organization based in Washington, D.C. And our mission is dedicated to strengthening U.S.-Japan relations through education, programs, and research. So I specifically work on Sasakawa USA's education program, and we essentially host a lot of public events and forums and small roundtables in Washington, D.C. for U.S. policymakers and the U.S. public to kind of educate them on U.S.-Japan relations and why it's important to U.S. interests. We also partner quite a bit with other organizations such as USJETAA, and I'm really happy to and excited to be working with Bahia on this program because I'm also a JET alum myself. I was a JET in Wakayama Prefecture from 2009 to 2012, and I did serve on the board for the JETAA chapter here for 5 years, and most recently served as its president for the past 2 terms. So I'm really excited to be talking today about this mini grant program for JETAA chapters and sub-chapters. And thanks, Bahia.
Great. Great, thank you, Joy. And you made me realize that I probably should have said something about my time on JET. I was a JET in Gunma Prefecture from 2005 to 2007. And then I was the president of the Florida JETAA Alumni Association for 5.5 years before I relocated back up to the Washington, D.C. area. Anyway, let's move along and start talking about the grant. For those of you on the call, everybody who's come on is muted. So if you have questions, you can save them to the end, or you can put them in the chat box on the Zoom platform, and we'll address them when we get to the Q&A portion. So we're going to do a brief overview of, first of all, what is this grant program? And I will talk a little bit about the purpose of the grant program, the application process, and various other details about this specific grant program. And then Joy will give you an overview of event management and best practices so that you can start planning your events with some ideas in mind of how to execute them very smoothly. And then we'll go into Q&A from anyone who's on the call and has questions. Okay, so first I want to talk a little bit about the purpose of the grant. Well, actually, first this is what I'm going to cover in my section. I'm going to talk about the purpose of the grant. I'm going to tell a little bit about how to apply. We're going to look at a sample budget and how to track your expenses. I'll talk about writing the final report, and then I'll go over some of the key deadlines. So the main purpose of the grant really has 2 main purposes. So first, we want to assist the JET alumni chapters and sub-chapters in holding events on U.S.-Japan relations. So we know that chapters receive a limited amount of funding from CLARE, and this is one way that we can help support you in doing more. The purpose of this particular project is that your grant should help further the understanding between the U.S. and Japan in areas where a JETAA chapter is located. It's a little bit different from last year's grant because last year's grant was less focused on the U.S.-Japan relationship. And so this year we really want to make sure that the topic fits with Sasakawa's mission of educating about US and Japan. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the application. So first, how do you apply? Well, you need to be eligible. It's pretty easy. You have to be a chapter in good standing, and your chapter president and the person coordinating the grant, who may not be the chapter president, it could really be anyone in your chapter, has to be a member of USJETAA. So go to our membership page and sign up if you're not a member already. Then we also really recommend that before you submit your application, contact us, let us know some of your ideas, and we'll discuss the idea with you before you apply. And that way we can help you make sure that your grant will meet the goals of the grant and the specific requirements so that you have a greater chance of your grant getting accepted. We also will be collaborating with you and working with you throughout the process. So it'll be an open dialogue, and we'll be workshopping your grant as needed. So feel free to use us as a resource and contact me, and I'd love to set up a call or communicate by email about whatever ideas you have in mind. So next, you need to complete the narrative application in detail, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and complete the preliminary budget template. So we are providing a preliminary budget, which will be a little bit, it's just a guideline that you can use, and you should make it as complete as possible, but we know that after the grant is accepted, there may be some changes that we'll work with you to make before it's finalized, but try to make it as complete as possible. Then after you start moving and working to do the grant, there'll be a final budget and an expense tracking template. So let me show you really quickly what these look like. So first, let's take a look at the grant application. I hope you can see this well enough, but it's up on the website on the grant page, so you can download it and look at it in more detail. But essentially, you need to describe in detail kind of what your grant is going to look like. So what is your topic? Why did you choose that topic? How is it related to U.S.-Japan relations? How will it improve the U.S.-Japan relations in your community? So Sasakawa is very focused on improving that relationship between the U.S. and Japan. And there's a lot of topics that you could choose that will fit with this, but the important thing is to connect it back to the relationship between the two countries. So for example, if you wanted to do something on the American internment of Japanese citizens, it would be important to have speakers and panelists that might compare that to the experience of indigenous people living in Japan or something, right? So it should be related to what's going on between the two countries. And then think about where you're going to hold the event. So what city are you going to hold it in? Why did you choose that location? Is it because there's a need for more Japanese cultural content in that area? Is it because you know somebody and it's easy to secure a venue? So just give some details about that. And then in your application, start thinking about who you want to present or perform or speak. And this doesn't have to be set in stone. USJETAA and Sasakawa, we can help you find presenters, especially if you know you want someone in a certain area of expertise, but you're not sure who to contact. But put down some information about the speakers you're thinking of or the types of speakers. If you have specific people in mind, do you already have connections with them? Why are they a perfect choice for this event? Is it going to be easy to get them? Are they a JET alumni? And then describe them and let us know whether they're local or out of state. With this grant, we will be providing funding if you want to bring somebody in from out of state. So consider that if you have someone who'd be really good for your topic but isn't local. And we do encourage you to consider JET alumni as your speaker because we really want to showcase the talents and knowledge of JET alumni. And then you'll describe your event in a narrative format. So what are the goals of the event in general? You've probably already covered that a little bit in the application. How's it going to be set up? Is it going to be a roundtable discussion? Is it going to be a cultural performance followed by a discussion and a workshop? Just give us a narrative description of what will happen at the event and how it's going to set up. And then briefly describe the Japan landscape of the proposed location. So Are you choosing an area where there's already a lot of Japanese-related cultural content? If so, what does this add? What community resources do you have in your area? Is there a Japan-America Society? Do you partner with them? Will that help you get more people interested in your topic? And what will this particular event add to the U.S.-Japan relationship and the Japan landscape of your city or community? And so those are the major ones that you really want to think about in detail before you apply. And then you will not be excluded if you don't meet any of our priority items, but we are hoping to help chapters who maybe haven't done a large event before do more. So if you're in an area with a less robust U.S.-Japan relationship, if you've never done an event like this, like the one that you're proposing, and if you've never received one of our grants with Sasakawa USA, please let us know if any of those apply so that we can take it into consideration in your grant. All right, let me go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so next, writing your final report. So after you do your event, we will provide all of the selected chapters with a template, an event report template, which will say like all the details that you want to include. But generally, you want to include like a description of what actually happened at the event, who your speakers were, how many people attended, information like that. And the event report, we would like it submitted as a Word document, not as a PDF, because when we compile the reports to go back to Sasakawa or promote them online on our blog, it's much easier if it's a Word document. The report should be in the third person, so no I or we. Please write it as if you're reporting on the event from like an outside perspective. And then we really, really encourage you to, I realized I forgot to show you the budget. I'll go back in a minute. We really encourage you to hire a professional photographer because we do have room in the budget for that, and it's really great when you can get really good photos of the events that you do. And then the pictures can be inserted into your report template, but we would also like them submitted as separate files. So let me go back real quickly to the budget that I forgot to show you. So this is a variation of what the sample budget looks like. This is one that Joy put together specifically for our webinar. But it shows some examples of how you can break down the budget and the different funding categories and how you would ask for different things. So you can adjust the amounts as needed for your area. You should do some research about what you expect what things will cost in your particular area. So depending on where you are, a photographer might be more expensive or less expensive. Or you might be able to book someplace by paying for food costs and not need an additional room fee. So these are just areas that you can use. But these three categories or the subcategories that are on here are fairly set in stone. But if you have another major category you'd like to add, please contact me and let me know, and we'll discuss it, and you might be able to add it. And then in general, for other line items within these within the subcategories, you don't need to contact us to let us know what you're going to do unless it's something that's unusual. So for example, here we have social media promotion at $50. Now, you can do social media promotion for free. So this would be something where if you have a special reason why you would want to use a somewhat unusual expense, you should contact us, let us know what your plan is, and we'll let you know whether that's an approved use or not. And then the second sheet here, and any of the chapters whose grants are accepted, we will provide you with a copy of this that you can use for your own. But essentially, you want to track every expense that you accrue through the course of this grant. So, you know, if you're going to book a hotel, you want to know how much that costs. If you're going to have local transportation, you want to know what that costs. Flights, honorarium, any of your meeting expenses, and your totals. And then if the balance is different from what you've proposed, you'll want to keep track of that as well, so that if something ends up costing a little bit less than you thought it would in the budget, you'll know how much to return to us. And then you'll also want to keep track of all the receipts, which you will number so that each receipt will have a designated number, and then you'll include the receipt numbers on here and then provide us with copies of the receipt at the end of the grant. Okay, next. I'm going to very briefly go over the key deadlines before I turn the mic over, or the floor over to Joy. But basically, you still have a lot of time before the application deadline. It's not until July 30th. We wanted to give a lot of time for people to start thinking about your ideas, doing the research that you need. I know it's a difficult time because a lot of chapters are in leadership transitions right now. So there's still a lot of time, and I really encourage you before this deadline, contact us and let us know what you're thinking of so that we can work with you to come up with a really great grant program. And then we will select the grants after we evaluate all of the applications. We'll select them on August 20th. Once the grantees are selected, we will contact you, make sure you're still committed to doing the grant. There'll be a form you'll need to sign. And then once everyone's agreed to it, we will officially announce the grantees on August 30th, and then again at the national conference in September. And then it's expected that you will complete any of your programs by February 15th, 2019, and the final report will be due on February 28th. So pretty much any time between September and January, February, you can hold your program depending on what works best for your chapter. Okay, I am going to turn this over to Joy. Give me 1 second to make her the host.
Thank you very much, Bahia. Yeah, and let's switch over the screens. So essentially, I think we should mention as well, so USJETAA and Sasakawa USA has been partnering on this mini grant program for a couple years now. This is the 3rd year of the program, and essentially it's very similar to previous years in the sense that Sasakawa USA through USJETAA, we're hoping to outreach to the JET alumni across the United States through this mini grant program and sort of give JET alumni the opportunity to host events in their communities. I was not on this grant program in previous years, but essentially I understand that a lot of chapters were given a broad directive, essentially on use this money in the way that you see best fits your chapter. And we've gotten some really great programs. A lot of chapters used it for career development workshops. I believe JETAA New York had an amazing gala earlier this spring, and some of the money was applied to that. Other chapters used it for sister city relationships and other things as well. This year, though, we are hoping, as Sasakawa USA is a nonprofit organization dedicated to strengthening U.S. Japan relations, we're hoping that this grant program, specifically, we're looking for events that help Sasakawa USA strengthen the U.S. Japan ties. And so we thought that by working together more closely with the chapters this year, we can workshop these events with you guys. So I know it's a lot of kind of budget planning, and the application process as well has changed a little bit this year. So I just want to emphasize that Bahia and I will be a lot more hands-on this year as well. And so I'll kind of go over in my slide as well some of the different things we're looking for. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention all of that. So let me change over. Bahia, I have the ability to share screens.
Yes, you are now the host. You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, there we go. Got it. Let me double check. Hold on. Give me 1 moment on which screen I can share. Okay. Everyone. Okay. Is everyone seeing a letter, or do they see the presentation?
I can see your presentation.
The presentation?
Yeah, the key deadlines screen.
Okay, great. I'm sharing the correct screen then. So yeah, just to go again on for this grant. So it's very similar as last year, but we're just hoping to do a little bit more by giving chapters money. There's also no really set from my understanding, Bahia, there's no set like amount that we're hoping the chapters should give. They'll be given a guideline, but it really depends on your chapter's needs and what you think it fits best in your community as well. We're just hoping to kind of strategize with each individual chapter and what might work best for your community, kind of write up the proposal with you, and also help you execute and develop your event together. And in this way, we are hoping that JETAA chapters can also be more active players, I guess, in a sense, in their communities on helping strengthen the U.S.-Japan relations and thereby our mission as well. So for in my section, I'm going to go over just basically generally briefly. At Sasakawa USA, a lot of things that I do every day is event planning. There's a difference though between event planning and event management. I'm going to go over that in my presentation as well. There's a lot of similarities, but event management is more comprehensive. And so I think a lot of chapters know the planning aspect, but we're hoping as Sasakawa USA can help chapters move towards the event management aspect as well. Again, because we're hoping that this year the mini grant program will be a little bit more involved, I will also discuss the roles and expectations between what we're hoping JETAA chapters will do and how USJETAA and Sasakawa USA will support those chapters in executing the event. And I'm also going to go over event best practices. So from devising the event concept to coordinating technical aspects to promoting and executing the event, and as well as wrapping up the event. So this will kind of make it a little bit clearer of the application itself, what Sasakawa USA is hoping JETAA chapters could do with this grant program. So, are you, Bahia, you can see the screen, right? There we go, okay. So first of all, what is event management? So I think most people are very familiar with the term event planning, which is the process of planning and coordinating the event itself. So this includes things like actual booking of the venue and coordinating the menu, food, and actually executing the event itself. Event management, on the other hand, includes all of this in event planning, but it's the specific application of project management to the creation and development of usually more complex events. So it's from the abstract idea of an event all the way through working into actual execution and of the event. So this includes stuff like event conceptualization, development of a plan and timeline, management of personnel leading up to the event. Oh, hold on, I think it's playing these slides a moment. Let's pause that. There we go. And execution of the event and troubleshooting on the day of. And as mentioned before, this year, USJETAA and Sasakawa USA will workshop the events with the selected chapters and our sub-chapters. So chapters will still be expected to do a lot of this, but we'll work with each individual chapter on your current capacity. And because Bahia and I will be, this is our day jobs, we're able to kind of help you do a lot of the logistical planning if you need it. So going into the specific roles and expectations of the chapters, overall, because JETAA chapters will be receiving this grant, you will be responsible for the overall implementation of the event. So essentially on the application form that Bahia showed, chapters will be asked to appoint a specific point of contact. This is similar to past years, and this point of contact will be the main sort of manager of the grant. Of course, we're expecting that this is not just going to be a one-person job, but chapters are encouraged to involve definitely the president of the chapter is expected to be on board, but also anyone else, either board members or volunteers for all of the planning as well. That being said, the point of contact for the JETAA chapters will also be in close communication with USJETAA, and USJETAA will kind of workshop these events with the chapters. And because Bahia at USJETAA is one person, I believe the idea this year is that Bahia is going to hire an alumni project coordinator to help facilitate the logistics for these various events. in your communities. And so the alumni project coordinator, for example, will be on hand to help the chapter with like specific travel and hotel arrangements for any out-of-town speakers. If your chapter chooses to have one, help with selecting and communicating with vendors or venues, and basically be someone, an extra paid hand to help out with these events. Because one thing, as a former president of a JETAA chapter myself, I am always strongly conscious of the fact that JETAA chapters run solely on volunteers. And so one thing that Sasakawa USA for this mini grant program is, I understand that a lot of events, they take a lot of work, and we want to make sure that JETAA chapters feel supported and basically have the support that they needed to host an event like this. And again, our hope is that JETAA chapters are able to host events like this in the future, and by workshopping the events that we give you the skills and experience needed to host an event like this on your own in the future. So for Sasakawa USA, while I will be kept in the loop on many of the communications between your chapter and USJETAA, I will be taking more of a back seat and just kind of adding additional guidance as needed and requested as well. Okay, so now that we have kind of like a baseline for what we're looking for in this mini grant program, I kind of would like to just go over some event management best practices that we would like chapters to consider as they work on your event proposal. So first of all, as Bahia kind of went through for the grant application, the first question you will have to answer is, what is your topic? So you will have to choose a topic on U.S.-Japan relations specifically. So some things we'd like you to consider is, what is your chapter's specific brand and I guess mission of your organization? I do realize that JETAA chapters around the United States all have a different mission in their community and a different place. Some chapters have a large presence in their community, other chapters are still kind of developing that. So that's one thing that you should definitely keep in mind as you choose your topic and where you kind of want your chapter to kind of go with this event. So other things you should consider is like, who is your target audience and what impact do you hope this event will achieve in your community? So this is partially why on the grant application this year, Sasakawa USA specifically requested JETAA chapters to explain the, sorry, I'm not sure why this is changing. Okay. This is partially why, I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure why this is changing. There we go. So on the grant application this year, we want chapters to explain the current U.S.-Japan programming in your area and how this event is expected to add to the Japan landscape in your community. So basically, we want chapters to really think about what sort of U.S.-Japan events are in your own communities, because we realize that it's very different, and kind of formulate an idea and conceptualize your event around what's already there and how the JETAA chapter can add to what the programming in your area. And we're really looking forward for innovative and creative ideas. So some ideas could be hosting a panel discussion or a small roundtable discussion or a film screening, but we really want chapters kind of be innovative and creative in coming up with ideas this year. Same thing for brainstorming speakers. Ideally, of course, we're hoping chapters could feature a JETAA alumni in your area, but it doesn't have to be one as well. And so please talk to USJETAA as well on some speakers that you can maybe host either in your community, or again, we have funding and we're encouraging JETs to bring speakers from out of town as well. So next is coordinating the technical aspects of the event itself. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. That's for later on once the chapters are selected. But I just want to briefly overview some of the logistical planning that we would, USJETAA and Sasakawa USA would be workshopping with the chapters. So first of all, for example, creating an event checklist. So who is in charge of finalizing the venue, arranging transportation, etc. Other things are inviting speakers and special guests. So one thing that Sasakawa USA we're hoping to provide for the chapters is I am putting together sort of like a kit of sample templates or examples that I've used in my own professional day job here at Sasakawa USA to give to chapters to kind of use as an example so that you can kind of host events like this in your city. So for example, a lot of times I'm inviting speakers to our events to speak at, either give a keynote speech or to serve on a panel. And a lot of times we don't have a current relationship with these speakers. And so we have to put together a formal invitation letter to them. And so I just want to quickly kind of share what this would look like. Ahia, can you confirm if you can actually see the letter? I can't see what everyone is seeing.
This is Smitha. I can see the letter.
You can see the letter? Okay. So this is one sample invitation letter that we send to our speakers. And again, I'm putting together a kit, so all the selected chapters will have this information. But essentially, it's on a formal letterhead. It's signed by our CEO. And it essentially is a formal way to introduce your organization and the event and give the event details as well. And a lot of times we also, if we're giving an honorarium or if we're flying out the speaker, we'll also give the details in this letter so that the person receiving it can consider all the details before they respond to our request. And we're hoping that since chapters will, we really would like to encourage chapters to kind of really kind of go out of the box and see who you can bring to your town. The best, if you don't have our current relationship with speakers, this usually is the best practice to kind of invite them. And so we would like Sasakawa USA just to kind of share our knowledge as well, and so that chapters can, become a little bit more professional and formal in the way that they conduct events. And so, again, we will provide the samples, we'll help you out with it, but this is just to kind of show one thing that we're hoping to provide chapters this year. The second thing is, it depends on what sort of event you do. A lot of times for my work, we host panel discussions and forums. So we usually draft a formal agenda and propose talking points for the speakers so that they have some sort of guidance on what they should talk about. So same thing where in the kit that we're hoping to provide the selected chapters, this is one example agenda that Bahia also attended when we co-hosted an event with Portland. We went to Portland earlier this year in March, and we had an event on strengthening U.S. Japan relations and opportunities and challenges for JET alumni in the area. And so we put together a formal agenda that we then printed out and handed out at the event so that attendees would kind of know what's going on. So usually there's like a summary of the event and what is expected to happen. We have the bios of the speakers, and then also, depending on the size of the crowd, but if it's a more intimate affair, this one was about maybe 20 people or so that attended. We also like to also include a participants list so that people who attend the event can see who is there as well. The last thing I want to show is also talking points. So this is something that, again, we're hoping Sasakawa USA as a nonprofit organization, we can kind of help chapters create for your events. If you choose to hold like a panel discussion, is kind of helping you put together like talking points to give to speakers so you can kind of direct the conversation as well. And this is also very important if you expect to have like a moderated panel discussion as well. So there will be other sort of templates that we hope to give to chapters, but those are the three main ones I want you to consider and just kind of showing as you kind of put together your proposal on what options there are. As Bahia mentioned, we do want to also encourage chapters to kind of budget in photography or even videography if you think you can manage it. A lot of times AV is also forgotten about, so we want to make sure that you have really thought about what sort of needs and other supplies your chapter might incur to put on an event, and also things to consider like promotional costs. You're more than welcome to kind of advertise your event over Facebook if you would like to, if you think your chapter would benefit from a larger crowd and getting out there into the community. That leads me into promoting the event. So in my opinion, this tends to be one of the most important steps that often kind of sometimes gets overlooked or becomes like an afterthought when you're planning events. A lot of times when people plan events, including myself, we focus so much on the event itself and inviting the right speakers, making sure we have the right venue, that we forget to kind of promote the event. The thing is that you can plan an amazing event with dynamic speakers at a fantastic venue, but if no one hears about it, then no one will come and you won't have a good event at all. So this is just something to keep in mind as you're kind of going through the planning of your event, is make sure you have an event promotion timeline. Send a save the date out at least 5 or 6 weeks in advance. And then make sure you also take into consideration that you should have multiple email blasts going out to either your listserv or through your Facebook accounts or whatever way your chapter utilizes to reach out to your members. Other things we would like to really encourage for this year is partnering or at least reaching out to other similar organizations in your area. I know a lot of JETAA chapters have close relationships with their local Japan American Society or other U.S. Japan related organizations. A lot of times you can ask them to kind of help you promote your events as well. And the last thing I just want to mention that we have not really required from Sasakawa USA in the past, but we would like to kind of strongly emphasize this year, is utilizing social media and logos of all the organizations involved. So one thing this year we would like to require is JETAA chapters should be always including USJETAA and also Sasakawa USA logos on all promotional materials, because we hope that your members will also, hear about our organizations as well. The other thing we would like chapters to do is promote events on social media so that others, including USJETAA and Sasakawa USA, can share and retweet about your event to our audience as well. And then just briefly, I'm not going to go into too many details for executing events, but generally I like to create a run of show for the event on the day of. You have to be explicit about everyone's responsibilities and delegate tasks. A lot of times I have found for events, people are always around to help, but unless they're given a specific directive or kind of a task, they don't know what they should be doing. So you must remember to tell them. Again, chapters are encouraged to recruit volunteers as necessary. For large events, I highly recommend getting at least 1 or 2 extra volunteers to act as floaters. The worst thing that you can have on the day of is not enough help. So I always find at least 1 or 2 extra hands on the day of is great for any troubleshooting or last minute tasks that pop up. And the last thing I just want to emphasize for executing the event is USJETAA and Sasakawa USA this year plan to send 1 representative each for every event. Well, for most of the events. I believe USJETAA has secured funding to attend each chapter's events, and the target is 3 chapters this year. And Sasakawa USA, we are hoping to send at least 1 representative as well, either myself or someone else from our organization to help out the day of. And so definitely take advantage of our help as well. The last thing I just want to mention is wrapping up the events. So as Bahia mentioned, we would like chapters to write a report to USJETAA. This is extremely important to summarize what actually happened, because USJETAA and Sasakawa USA, we have our own, we absolutely need to kind of, Sasakawa USA gets our money from our own sister foundation in Tokyo, and we also need to kind of justify why we spent the money. So it's extremely important to write a good report that also mentions the impact that your event had on the community, so that we can send that to and justify the spending of the funds. Another thing I just want to mention is post the summary with pictures online. Today with social media and everything, if you don't post it on Facebook, it's like, did it actually really happen? This is something I just want to mention now, because as I was preparing for this webinar and for the JETAA chapters this year, I did look online on past chapters, what they have done, and not every chapter was able to put a summary with pictures online, which is fine, but it does make it hard on, if anyone who didn't attend the event, like myself, to actually know that it happened or what actually happened there. It's almost like it didn't exist. I have a summary that everyone sent me to USJETAA, so we have the final report, but if it's not online, then it's very hard for others to hear about it and know that it actually happened. And so last thing to consider is also sending thank you letters or a survey to attendees. And one thing that we would like chapters to also is learn from this experience. And so we're hoping that chapters can also hold like a hot watch to discuss lessons learned from this event, and also share with Sasakawa USA and USJETAA as well on what you learned and how we can improve this mini grant program in the future. And so in summary, from both my presentation and for Bahia, the purpose of the grant this year is we would like to support the efforts of JETAA chapters and sub-chapters to organize events and activities on U.S.-Japan relations around the U.S. Just to reemphasize, the deadline for applications is July 30th, 2018. Again, to reemphasize, USJETAA and Sasakawa USA is going to help chapters workshop the events this year, and contact Bahia at USJETAA office to discuss your chapter's ideas before applying. So I know that was a lot of information, so I think we have about 20 minutes left to kind of discuss any questions that chapters may have. And Bahia, do you want to kind of take over the slides again?
Yeah, I will. Actually, I'm not going to take over. Just leave it on that slide because on my computer right now, if I have the slide projecting, I can't see other information that I want to see. But for answering questions, I would suggest that since we have a small group of people, you can go ahead, if you have a question, unmute yourself and ask anything that you want some additional clarification on or feedback on, or even if you have ideas that you want to share with us now.
I guess I will start. So this is Smitha Prasad. I think I pretty much know all of you at this point, but I'm the president of the Pittsburgh sub-chapter of JETAA in New York. And thank you for this. And I'm sorry that I missed the first 10 minutes. So if you might have touched upon this already, I do apologize. But I mean, we've just been in such an interesting position, I guess, with the growth of our chapter, and also the fact that Pittsburgh as a city is going through such a resurgence and really pushing hard to invigorate a lot of programs, including some potentially in the U.S. Japan space. I mean, we're still getting a lot more details on kind of what the city is doing with those. But as far as, I mean, I'm wondering if past, and again, I also apologize for not looking through what the other chapters have done, but what are some of the kind of quote unquote unconventional things that people have done with their Sasakawa grants in the past? So I know you mentioned the typical ones are a panel discussion, a film screening, but is this also available for smaller scale events, like doing multiple small events over the course of the 6 months? Like perhaps more, say, volunteer-oriented things, or is it more, you know, since you really emphasized AV and, you know, larger organizational stuff? Like, is there are there types of events that say Sasakawa and USJETAA prefer?
Joy, I feel like you're going to have some comments on this.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely say what Sasakawa USA, what we would be hoping for on this. So essentially our main, or my main hope this year is that the events must be on something about JETAA alumni helping to strengthen U.S. Japan relations in your own local community. So in terms of the size and scale of the events, I'm very hopeful that we have some large events, but also some smaller community events as well. So it just really depends on your local community, and that's why also we would like to know about more of your community as well in your application. In terms of funding though, the funniest thing for me, I guess in my position and coming from like JETAA chapters, JETAA chapters are so great, I think, at using the limited funding that we get. I know chapters are so great at really not using a lot of money for their events, and it's so funny for me to be working at a professional organization where we have a little bit more leeway in terms of funding to host larger scale events. That I also often host events that don't use a lot of funding, but I guess the point of this program too is to kind of help chapters elevate and do something more that you would not be able to do without this grant. So in terms of, yes, so in other words, yes, you can have a small scale event, but at the same time, you could do that without the mini grant program as well. So my hope is that chapters can kind of really shoot for the moon, in other words, on doing something that you would not be able to do without this funding. So one example being, and that's why we put like video and photography as an event as part of the budget proposal, is that usually in my experience, photographers professionally cost maybe like $100 or $200 an hour. So, and that's something as a JETAA chapter, I know getting grant money from a GIA funding from Claire would be difficult, but with Sasakawa USA's grant, we make it a practice to always have a professional photographer and more recently a videographer to actually record the conversations or the panel discussion so that it can, go beyond just the people attending the event itself. So those are just some ways that we hope that this money can be used this year, is to basically do something more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Joy. And I'm pretty much on the same page as you. I think the two most important things about this grant are, like Joy said, we want you to be able to do something that you would not have the capacity or the funding to be able to do without this grant. So keep that in mind. And then the purpose of the grant and our goals with the grant is something you should also keep in mind. So the narrative application this year is very detailed. It asks a lot of questions. It wants a lot of detail about what your topic is and why it's important, that type of thing. And so I think as long as you're doing an event that will kind of be something new or different that your chapter hasn't been able to do before and fits that goal of the chapter event to further the U.S.-Japan relationship, you have a lot of flexibility within that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions? Oh, I see a chat come up. Okay, so Fernando asked by chat if there's any particular priority focus on JET's impact on U.S.-Japan's relations, education, sister cities. So I would say that no, not necessarily, that it's great if your event, so one of our goals is there's a lot of really interesting JET alumni who are doing really interesting things. And so that's one reason we kind of encourage you to, if you can, find a JET alumni to be one of your speakers or to contribute to this event in some way, because that's one way that we show the impact that JETs have on U.S.-Japan relations. But your topic itself doesn't necessarily need to be just focusing on the impact of JET on U.S.-Japan relations, although that in of itself would be a very interesting topic. And you could also, by extension, look at the relationship between JETAA chapters and sister cities, or I don't know, scholarship of JET alumni after they go to Japan and how it's contributed to the to scholarship in a particular field of education or something. These are just ideas off the top of my head, but so I guess my answer to your question, Fernando, is no, but it's a great idea. It doesn't have to be, but it's a great idea.
Yeah, and I would also like to, yeah, I agree with that from Sasakawa USA's end. We don't have any particular priority on any specific one issue. I think it really just depends what makes the most sense for your community as well.
Right. So, for example, like if you have, for example, a JET alumni who's an expert in a particular area, and you know that this person does a lot of lectures and talks and things like that, you could look at the area that they're an expert in and think about what types of topics you could build around that so that you can leverage their experience and their network in your community.
Any other questions?
Okay, Andy just commented some questions in the chat box. Oh. So, question 1, giving priority to JET alumni speakers. Assuming a chapter has an idea for an event, or for example, a topic for a roundtable, does Sasakawa or USJETAA have a list of potential speakers who might fit the topic? So I'm going to answer question 1 first. So USJETAA and also as we've been working with JETAA USA, we do have some lists of kind of prominent JET alumni in various fields. But we're working on kind of expanding and bolstering that list. And in fact, one thing that we did recently as we updated the membership on the USJETAA website, in the membership directory, is you can now say whether you're willing to be a speaker and what subjects you're able to speak about, in the hopes that that will help JET alumni chapters find good speakers for events. So one of the reasons we'd like you to contact us if you have an idea is that Sasakawa works with a lot of people to do events all over the country, and they have a great idea of who to ask in particular regions to speak at various Japan-related things. And USJETAA, while we don't have like a list we can just give out, we also have a lot of connections in different areas. And if we don't know somebody, we can figure out who to ask to find somebody good for you. Joy, do you want to comment on that before we get to question 2?
No, and essentially, yeah, what you said. So for Sasakawa USA, essentially, yeah, we don't have a specific list of potential speakers, but I would be able to, once Bahia lets me know about a specific chapter and their topic, I can definitely help also research on potential speakers either from our community or in contact or anywhere in the country as well, and see if we can make that connection as well. So that's one thing I am hoping that chapters also utilize is Sasakawa USA. While we're a small organization based in DC, thankfully we are quite well known in the U.S. Japan community. So if a chapter, let's say a chapter looks for someone very prominent and they're not comfortable sending a letter out from themselves, we can work with the chapter to send it out through Sasakawa USA and request the speakers to present at your event as well, and use our influence to help you get these speakers. So yeah, we will, this is what we kind of mean by workshopping the event with chapters, is we really want to kind of help chapters aim higher as well on something that you have not done before. And then number two, I guess the second question is, if a chapter received a grant for JET 30 last year, are you still eligible to apply this year? Essentially, yes. We are giving priority to chapters who have not received a grant from us in prior years, but it just really depends on who applies and what their ideas are. So essentially, if you've already received a grant from us, I would not disqualify yourselves from applying this year. We really want to work with as many chapters as possible as well this year.
Yeah, and to add to that, if you have a great idea, please apply for it, even if you got a grant last year. And especially, you can always make a case in your application for why this is more or really provides a great opportunity for your community. And we definitely are still considering the applications of people who have received Sasakawa grants in the past.
Thank you for answering my questions.
All right, we just have a few minutes left. Does anybody else we can take a final question if anyone has one? Fernando asks, any international speakers? We have a limited budget, so I would not recommend suggesting that, trying to get an international speaker for your grant.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, Bahia, did you mention beforehand how much the grants are this year?
No, just you have a lot of flexibility, but I would recommend try not to go over the amount that is presented on the sample budget. So if it's less than that, fine. If it's a little bit more, you can still request it. It doesn't mean you're going to get that much. But yeah, you can use that as a general guideline because of course how much we can give out is going to depend on what the amounts of the different chapters are requesting.
Yeah, and I just generally want to make mention, too, it will depend also on how prominent the speaker is. Usually for Sasakawa USA, when we're inviting international speakers, they are high level enough to justify business level travel, which just to kind of throw it out there, from DC to Japan, the average business class ticket runs around $6,000 to $8,000, and so that is quite high, I think, for this event. And I think on the sample budget, I don't have it on me right now, but I believe it's about $5,000 to $6,000 roughly per chapter that we're hoping chapters apply. So an international speaker, business class, would be about that much. So, but
yeah, and even
business class can be like $1,000. So that is definitely possible.
And I would say even if you were to fly somebody non-business class internationally, you'd really have to justify that cost and it eating into your budget, because there's other great things that you could do with that money instead. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend international speakers unless you know somebody who happens to be coming to town for some other reason, like they're coming to a conference or they're going to be in town and because they're an alumni who's visiting, who keeps ties with your local chapter, then you might be able to coordinate with them without having to pay that international cost. But I really wouldn't recommend pursuing international speakers in general. Okay, I think we're just about out of time. If you have any questions after this, you can contact me at the USJETAA office. You can give us a call. I'm usually in the office Monday through Thursday, and then I usually telecommute on Fridays, but sometimes that changes. You can also send me an email. My email address is director@usjetaa.org. You can email me and we can set up a time to talk. and brainstorm and think about whatever project you're considering, or just shoot me an email with some of your ideas and we can go back and forth that way. So thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, Joy, for being here and helping with this webinar and answering everybody's questions. It's really great this year that we're going to be able to provide, I think, a higher level of support. I understand, especially as former president of Florida JETAA, it can be really, really difficult to put on an event when you don't have a lot of time to dig into the meat of logistics, which is why, as Joy mentioned, we will be having an alumni project coordinator. We're looking to hire a program assistant for the U.S. JETAA office to help with not just this grant, but other grants. And that way we'll have somebody who can do things like help make flight reservations, help with some of the research, help book things or make phone calls to restaurants or venues, things like that. Because I know that a lot of times you have chapters have great ideas, but you don't always have the manpower to put them on. So our goal this year is to help you put on a grand event that is, like Joy said, beyond what you've done in the past, or on at least a substantial scale. Joy, do you have any final comments before we close?
No, I think that we pretty much covered everything in this webinar. This is essentially the first presentation that we're doing on this, just to give everyone a baseline. But we're assuming any interested chapter should be contacting Bahia to kind of discuss their idea, flesh it out. Bahia will be, and you'll be contacting me as well to kind of discuss chapters' ideas, and we will work on it that way. So we're expecting to hear from hopefully many chapters in the coming weeks as well on any other questions or ideas that you have for this program. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you. And as soon as we get the recording posted online, I'll be sending it out to all of the contacts I have for the JETAA chapters. And also we'll be posting it on our website on the page for the grants. And we'll be sharing it on our Facebook page. So stay tuned for that. I think I should be able to get it out by Monday. So stay tuned for that. I know there were a lot of people who wanted to attend and couldn't, so hopefully people will have a chance to view this webinar and then get back to us with ideas later. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.